All right, so we're on. Um, Vinny, welcome to the very first Instrumentals of Rock podcast. I appreciate you doing this.
Thank you,
Yeah,
man. It's always good to be a first.
yeah, definitely. Let me pull this up. Okay. So last time we spoke, I don't know if you remember, but 27 years ago.
That's crazy.
Yeah, isn't that wild? 1996, and your Out of Nowhere album was just coming out.
Right. Yeah.
So
Seems
that
about right. I was like 2 or 3 years old at the
I
time.
think so. Yeah, I was maybe just a couple years older. Yeah.
Exactly.
So luckily, we have great moms. They let us do, a little
Right.
podcast, little
Nurtured us,
interview.
and we were advanced for our age.
So, what have you been up to since then? No, that was just kind of an easy lob. But and you're still in the same place. You're still in Delaware.
Yeah. Still on the East Coast.
Oh, yeah. And so you've traveled all over the world since we last spoke, and done a lot of
Yeah.
touring and traveling, right? But
I built up the frequent flyer miles for sure.
but you're still in Delaware, where you're from. I mean, ever any thoughts about, moving anywhere else, or that you've seen or been to?
Well, I've considered it over the years, especially earlier on in my career, but just got to a point where I was too lazy to do it, and it just didn't feel necessary because I'd be on the road or in the studio, and there was no real reason to do it. So I never
Right,
made that move.
right. The interview that we did back in '96, I thought it was a really good interview. I really enjoyed it. And like a lot of interviewers, you know, they ask how you first got started, what
Hmm.
you did, lessons and stuff like that. And you talked about the story where you would just come back from either your first lesson or a few lessons, and said to your mom, "Hey, I'm done with this," and she said,
Oh, yeah,
she said, "Give it another week, Vinny."
exactly. Yeah, the
It,
first lesson was very frustrating. I couldn't even hold the guitar properly.
right.
I was
So
kind of falling off to the left. And
so you have it all to you owe it your entire career to your mom that you kept on
yeah,
going.
she would be happy to hear that, actually. So I think so. Yeah, I was
Yeah.
like really frustrated. And I was like, okay, I want to go back to playing drums. And I never really played drums. I had some drumsticks, and that was it, and a little pad. And I had taken one lesson when I was like 9 or something, and quit that too. So I was a
Right.
quitter. But yeah, I wanted to go back to drums, and luckily I hung in there for a week, and I got home and the frustration went away, and I picked up the guitar, and it's like, all right, let me try some of this stuff. And I
Right.
started working on the lesson, and got good at what I was doing. And I went back, and it was like a totally 360 or 180-degree shift, I
Right.
guess you would say.
Right. Well, kind of the reason I brought that up was um, the album that we talked about when we did that past interview. There was a lot of family involved in that album. And
Hmm.
so, with that interview we had, you talked about your mom, you wore your grandpa's jacket on the cover, you had
Right. Yeah.
a song about your grandmother that had just passed, and
Exactly. Yeah.
you almost had a song in your wedding,
Hmm.
that you had done as well. So your family's a big thing for you. Are you a family guy? Are you,
Oh yeah,
you have
totally.
kids?
And at that point in the '90s, there was just a lot of things going on all at once, like grandparents dying, and as these things happen, and they all seem to happen, simultaneously. And so, as a songwriter, I was feeling it and writing about it.
Right. Yeah, I just remember you talking about the one with your grandmother, and how you're crying while you were making it, and then the thought of
Hmm.
trying to redo that, just wasn't going to work. And the original was the original. So
Yeah, sometimes trying to recreate things is like bogus. I mean, you might be in a recording studio and actually get a better, higher quality recording, but to me, I mean, the feel supersedes anything else. That's what's most important. And
right,
trying to create that feel is like, how do you do that again? It's kind
yeah.
of crazy.
The other thing that you talked about, we went through a whole list of the songs, and you talked about each of the songs. And I asked you about I asked you about Vin Man's Brew,
Hmm.
and so you told me you were into the microbreweries and everything, and you were ahead of the curve there, because that was 96, which it
Okay.
was just kind of getting started. Now it's like the big thing, everywhere, all the microbrews and local breweries and so many independent breweries and everything. Is that something you're still taking part of?
Well, I went through a phase where I started making my own beer, and that was like a
Oh,
lot of
really?
fun. Yeah, and then I got really busy touring and stuff, and I just no longer had the time to do it. But I'd like to do that again. I had a lot of fun making beer.
Were you just making it for yourself in your house, or were you thinking about
Y-
putting it out
No,
there?
yeah, just for myself. Like you'd make a couple cases at a time, and
Yeah.
it was so enjoyable doing it that when you got to the part where you could drink it, it's almost like you didn't want to drink it because it'll be all be gone. My beer.
Right. Well, that reminds me, I was going to ask this question later, but it reminds me of when you talked about, or I read, where you, I think it was 99, where you opened up for Rush.
Oh, that
Was,
was
or,
92, I believe.
oh, it was earlier. Okay.
Yeah,
Um,
it was right when the Meltdown record came out and we were doing the
oh, okay.
Meltdown tour. Yeah.
So, Rush is one of my favorite bands. I saw them 19 times, and I just love them. And what was it like opening for any stories about being around them and being on that tour?
There weren't a whole lot of Rush stories because they kind of kept to themselves, even though they were really nice guys. We hung out with
Mm-hmm.
them a little bit, but they kind of kept to themselves. One of the things that sticks out in my mind is that they had this big, huge production, of course. So they had like
Right.
semis and all these tour buses. You drive up to the arena and see all these trucks and buses. And we were on tour, me and my band, with a rider truck that the crew was driving, and the band was in a little white minivan, like some kind of Plymouth or whatever, Dodge Caravan or whatever it was
Right.
called. And so we we drove up, here we come in this little minivan amongst all these trucks and tour buses, and drive right into the back of the venue, right up to the backstage door because everything was so open at this one venue. I can't remember which one it was, but it was just so comical.
Right.
But I mean,
uh,
it was such a great experience playing to those big audiences, to the Rush fans, and
right.
I'm so glad I got to do that. At first it was really nerve wracking because the first two shows were at the Spectrum in Philadelphia, which
Oh,
was my
that's
home,
right.
the
Yeah.
home crowd, and it's like, oh
Mm-hmm.
my God, the family's there, and it was really nerve wracking, but you just kind of plow through it.
Yeah. Well, they just came out with their own beer. I don't know
I
if you heard.
heard.
Yeah, I haven't tried it. They're now shipping it to the U.S., but in the beginning you could only get it in Canada. But I think Vin Man's Brew. I think you need to you know put out some tall boys, and you know
That's a good idea. When
yeah.
we were on the Roll the Bones tour,
Oh
and one of the
yeah.
lyrics is "Why are we here? Because we're here."
Right.
And their crew changed it to "Why are we here? Because there's beer. Let it roll. Let it roll. Not let it roll.
Oh,
Roll the bones."
right, right. Oh, that's cool. So the other thing, going back to the interview that we did, I mean, you talked about influences. One of the things was you talked about your fusion influence, and we just lost Jeff Beck, and you mentioned how important that was, and Larry Carlton, Robin Ford, Al Di Meola, those guys. And have you ever thought of doing a kind of a fusion album and stepping away a little bit from the style that you've been doing?
Well, there's always been those elements in my on my
Right.
records,
Mm-hmm.
within songs, and there's even been entire fusiony songs like "Pieces of a Picture" from the Time Odyssey record. But I'm honestly trying to move away from the instrumental thing in general and just get more of
Okay.
a band and a vocal thing together. That's where I want to head. I mean, I've done so many instrumental records. I really would like to do more of a band thing because I have a lot of vocal songs and
Right.
kind of explore that for a little bit.
Yeah, and I've been, since we were going to do this this interview, I've been listening to all your stuff, and you really have, as it's one of the reasons why I've always liked your music, is that it hasn't been the same for each album, and you've always tried to do something a little bit different, and
Hmm.
that kind of makes sense. You've kind of, I mean, yeah, you could do another instrumental rock record, and we'd all love it, but for you as an artist, yeah, that's kind of, you know, been done, and you're sort of putting baby steps on it with this album that you just came out with.
Hmm.
And
Yeah, that's not really intentional. I just kind of pick up a guitar, I write songs, and it just sort of happens. And I can't
yeah,
make up my mind what I like. I just like so many different things, and it kind of drives me crazy because I'm getting pulled in different directions. But I
right.
just kind of like, I don't fight it, I don't resist, I just go along with it.
Yeah. And I think that this new album, I don't think it's ever been done before like that, especially from well, I mean, I can't think of any instance where there's been, okay, here's a song and it's instrumental, and here's a song and it's vocal. And
I
I
can't
just,
either, so maybe I'm a lot of firsts today. So maybe I
yeah.
am one of the first guys to do that.
And when you did that, are they? I mean, I've listened to them, like I've A and B'd them back and forth, because I know I've seen other interviews where you talk about, how am I going to do the tracking on it,
Hmm.
and I think it's great the way that you did it. But I wanted to go back and forth. So, um, and is it the same instrumental track, and then you're going over it with the vocals, or or did you go in and totally redo one or the
Well,
other
it
versions?
started as the same track, and overall, I would say, most of the time it is the same, but I changed the arrangements a little bit, to accommodate whatever in the vocalist part, and
Right.
sometimes I added different parts because the vocal kind of called for, whatever, just a different texture or whatever. So I would add things that way, and I shortened sections in some of the vocal songs, like in Vertical Horizon, like the sister to that is Astro Man, and it's
Okay.
got like a long kind of a funky section before the main guitar solo, and it was just too long and for a vocal song, so I kind of
Right.
cut that down. So
Well, that's
little
cool.
treatments here and there, but overall, pretty much it started as being the same.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. I really like it. What's the status on? Are you working on going out with it?
So far, I have a tour lined up for Europe for September.
Oh,
And
okay.
I wanted to do America first, but the timing didn't quite work out. So hopefully I'll be able to come back and do that after the
Okay.
Euro dates.
All right. Um, and so, of course, when you talked about influences back then, you mentioned, Trower and a bunch of other guys, and Michael Schenker as well,
Hmm.
during that interview. And then I guess you opened up for him in '99. Was that something around
Yeah.
there, and toured
Yeah.
with
That would have
him?
been on for me, the Maze tour. And I don't know which record he had at that point, but yeah, we did 32 shows all across America. It was a
Wow.
lot of fun. We had the same band, and
Uh,
his singer at the time was a guy named Keith Slack from Texas, and that's how where I met Keith originally, and we became friends and have kept in contact over the years. And he sang on the new record on two
oh,
songs, "Hummingbird" and "Paid My Dues." So
oh,
I
cool.
have that tour to thank for meeting Keith and finally
Yeah.
getting to work with him.
Now I know Michael wasn't with UFO at the time, at least I don't think, but I think he kind of went back. Was the connection to UFO have anything to do with that, or did that come totally separate?
Well, I guess in some ways, yeah, because his manager at that time was a guy named Peter Knorn from Hanover, Germany, and then Peter stopped working with Michael, and then ironically started managing UFO. So I had
Okay.
met Peter because he came out on the road for a while, so we got to know one another. So
Huh.
there was that connection, and then there was another guy that was on that tour who was tour manager and guitar tech for both Michael and I, named Jerry Carrillo. And he had also done sound for UFO at one point, front of
Huh.
house. So when they were looking for somebody, they started out in England and, were unsuccessful, and then finally tried to, open up the search to more of a worldwide thing. And immediately Jerry Carrillo said, "Hey, I think Vinny would be really good for this, gig." And then of
Right.
course Peter, their manager, is like, "Yeah, I know Vinny. I met him when we were on the Vinnie Moore Michael Schenker tour." So there were a couple connections to that. Yeah.
Nice. So when you got that, it must be in the beginning when you hadn't done any new material yet with the band. It must have been such an honor to be able to play those songs that you know grew up listening to and that were so great, and to be able
Exactly.
to
Yeah.
tour with those.
Yeah,
And
I mean, I used to
um,
listen to those songs in my bedroom and play guitar with the songs. So yeah, it was kind of surreal in a lot of ways.
going back again, I keep going back to parts of the other interview, but you literally said, if I ever find the right singer to write with, I think a vocal project would be great.
Hmm.
And then you hook up with Phil, and
Right.
were you initially hired as just a guitar player, or was it with the idea of writing songs, or did that just kind of naturally happen with you and Phil?
No, that's the good thing about that opportunity is that Phil was looking for a guy to be a songwriter. That's what he always had, a guitar
Oh,
player that could play and write songs and contribute in that manner. So that's what he
right.
wanted. So lucky for me, I didn't join the band as just some hired hand that went on tour with them. The first
Hmm.
order of business was doing a new record, and
Okay.
he wanted to hear my material. And in
Ah,
fact, he liked a bunch of the songs that I had originally sent him, for my auditions, or whatever you want to call it. And he
right.
wanted to do some of those. So they ended up on the first record, actually, on the You Are Your record.
Wow. And so you ended up at this point, you've done six, I think, studio records, something like that,
Yeah,
with UFO.
sounds about right.
And it's how is you know how's the process with you and Phil when you write songs? Um,
um, Usually
fi-
he likes you to send him your ideas. So, like, Paul was an active writer, I was a writer. And so Paul and I would just, like, lock ourselves up in a room, so to speak, and work on ideas. And then we would actually record them, make, demos, and just hit Phil with a bunch of songs. And then
okay,
Phil would kind of listen and kind of pick the ones he liked the best or the ones he was most inspired by. And then, he would choose, whatever. I think I would send sometimes like 15, 20 songs to him. Paul would
okay,
usually have a good 10 or 12. And then, we just kind of sift through them. We'd eventually get together in Germany at a rehearsal studio and kind of start deciding on, which 10 we were going to actually choose for the record.
right. And did he write the lyrics after hearing the music, or would he
It's
already have stuff?
Oh no, he definitely writes lyrics last minute, unfortunately for us sometimes, because we don't even know what he's going to end up doing. He
Wow.
doesn't really sing at these rehearsals I mentioned. He sits there with a notepad and a pencil and just listens to the band. And
Yeah.
so you have no idea what he's going to do. And you end up going in the studio and you lay down the song. And then it's not until you get like a first rough mix that you go, "Oh yeah, okay." Not,
Oh, wow.
I didn't even know what he was going to be doing. Oh, that's it.
Yeah.
And
Um, and so, is there, what's the latest as far as UFO at the moment? Is
yeah,
any
it's kind of
news?
up in the air. Just kind of waiting around. Not waiting around, but waiting to see if there's going to be more shows maybe next year. And
Mm-hmm.
who knows? It would be great
Yeah.
if there were some, so we could kind of end it on a more proper note, but we'll see. I'm not counting on it. I'm just going about doing my own stuff.
Right.
And if it does happen, it'll be a nice thing.
Yeah. Um, and in the late '90s in your career, um, was that a thought of joining a established band, or is that just something that, I mean, what was your career mindset like, say, in '96, as far as when you thought about what your career was going to be and the direction you were heading in?
Well, I mean, everything was in the open for me. If like an opportunity came up, that was one potential thing that I was thinking would be great to do. Getting my own band together, making my own records. Like everything was there in my mind. And
Right.
luckily that kind of came up and turned out to be a really, really good thing that was like, pretty long term, actually. It turned out to be 20 years.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. And when you set up for UFO, when your guitar set up for UFO, and then your guitar set up for yourself when you're doing something live, is there a big difference as far as what you have, guitars you use? Um, do you
Not
adjust your
really.
sound much?
Not a whole lot, actually. I mean, I just kind of do my sound and that's what it is. I mean,
Okay.
there are certain songs where I might record with a certain effect or whatever in the studio. So if I go out and do that song live, I'll have to bring that effect out on the road so I can kind
Mm-hmm.
of recreate the recording. But it doesn't change a whole lot, actually. It's pretty similar.
Okay. And you've had your own record label so you've been producing your own records. Is that, do I have that right?
Yeah, I have three out now on Mind's Eye Music, which is my own label.
Okay.
And I almost did that for the one before that, which was called To the Core, that
Mm-hmm.
preceded the three. And because I recorded at home and totally finished the record, it was 100% finished. And then I got a label after the fact, and I almost like self released it back then and kind of wish I did. But, you know, eventually I got to the point, which is great because it's total freedom and I can do what I want.
Right. And then you have somebody else distribute it, or are you, I know the record
Yeah.
industry and the whole world has changed so much, in the past 27 years, but
Yeah, I have
um
some different distributors in different countries, and then a company that does the digital stuff, which is
right.
worldwide. So,
Sure.
yeah, so there's two different avenues as far as that goes.
Yeah.
Some people want to actually hold the disc in their hand and
Right.
read the lyrics, and some people don't care. They just want to hear it digitally.
Yeah. Have you been doing vinyl at all?
I haven't yet. It's something I've been thinking about.
Mm-hmm.
At this point, it's really expensive to make, you
Yeah, I
know,
bet.
but it would be something cool to just have some vinyl for
Yeah.
sure.
Maybe do a package deal where you get like a 6 pack of, Vin Man's Brew and the vinyl
That
package,
sounds like,
you know.
yeah, you might get too drunk. I mean, it could be a good thing because, if they drink the beer and then they're more inclined to like the record. So it'll be, more favorable for me.
Um, I read where you use variety of different guitars on the new album, and one of them was the Gibson Splatter guitar that was made for you back in the day. Does that
Oh,
ring a bell?
Ibanez.
Oh,
The
Ibanez.
Ibanez
Okay,
spotter.
sorry. Okay,
Yeah, well, this is my signature model back in the late '80s, I believe, when I was with
okay,
Ibanez. And I have two of them. I have a white one and the splatter one. They're just kind of sitting in cases in a bedroom closet. And one of my friends, Jamie Humphreys, who's a guitar player and kind of does interviews like this one, asked me about it. And he actually asked me in advance of an interview. And so I went and I found it and I brought it into my studio and was able to show it because it seems people are interested in that guitar for whatever reason. So I kind of got to show it, and then it was in the studio here. So I was like, "Hey, let's try it for a solo," and I ended up
right.
using it on one of the solos.
And there was only 25 made? Is that um, something like that? Really
It's like
small?
maybe it might have been 25 white and 25 splatter, 50
Oh,
total.
okay.
Yeah,
Right.
so there's not many of them out there.
And all the splatters, or is it a different splatter for every one?
Yeah, I mean they
Okay.
literally just like got some paint, dipped something in it, and kind of splattered the guitar with different colors. So it's
Wow.
kind of each one is, whatever came out, came out.
It'd be interesting to know where they all ended up.
Yeah, I
Where the
mean, I
rest
see
of
them
them.
from time to time online. Some people have them, and I've seen them come up for sale at times.
Right. So when you clock out of the Vinnie Moore guitar rock shift, and at the end of the day or the end of the week, what do you like to do? I saw on Facebook you were at a baseball game, so you're
Yeah,
a baseball fan,
yeah, I'm a big
and
sports fan in general, but yeah, I like to go see the Phillies a few times a year, and yeah, went for the first time 2 weeks ago, and so I pay attention to that. And luckily, last year they were in the World Series, so it was definitely a good year. And I go to
nice.
the gym a lot, just try to keep in shape, work out like usually 5 days a week. And
Yeah,
I mean, that's pretty much it, actually. Go out with
uh,
friends, just your normal,
yeah.
typical, boring stuff.
And do you have kids or?
Yeah, I have two boys. They're older now in their
Oh,
mid 20s.
all right, great. Um, and read books. Are you a book reader?
Um, I used to be a little bit more than I am now. I tend to read things online a lot,
Mm-hmm.
but not really books,
Yeah,
just little things that catch my interest here and there.
yeah. All right. Well, I think that's probably going to do it. This is the first one I've done, and I had this show back in the mid '90s. I
Hmm.
did 137 of the shows,
So
one
you have
hour
the
week.
second coming here.
The second coming, yeah, and it took me a while to figure out what I was going to do with all the interviews, and so I'm going to do a kind of a mix of old interview, new interview, and I'm working on a show that's going to. I just saw a compilation album of James Brown and Marvin Gaye, two separate
Oh,
albums,
wow.
and they were all instrumental tracks that they had done. And so
No kidding.
it's the Marvin Gaye band, and it's all instrumental with Marvin playing on there too, and the same with James Brown, and
So I
where
could
he's
get
playing
that and like do
keyboard.
karaoke, like, hey,
Yeah,
want to kiss myself.
exactly.
Fellas, when I count it off, 1, 2, 3, 4, can we hit it and quit it?
Exactly. So so it's gonna be that. So see if we can kind of go back also to the history of instrumental rock from the 50s and 60s and stuff like that. So
Oh, very cool, man. That
yeah.
sounds awesome. I wish you a lot of luck and success with it.
All right, thanks a lot. And when I get this uploaded and going, I'll let you know, and we can do some. You can let all your listeners and social media people know that it's on. It'll be on all the podcast platforms. So,
Absolutely. I will do so.
all right, man. Thanks a lot. Appreciate your
Okay.
time.
Thanks for having me on, man. I totally appreciate being the first guy. And
Yeah,
awesome.
right on.
All
Thanks.
right.
Okay,
Talk to you
man.
again, man. Not in 27 years, though. Hopefully
No, let's
sooner.
try to do it sooner.
Okay. Next year.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay. Thanks,
All
man.
right, man. See ya.